The drums of revolt, the Abah Women's Riot, also known as the Abah Women's War of 1929, was a significant anti-colonial uprising in southeastern Nigeria, led predominantly by women. It was a direct response to the colonial policies of the British administration and marked one of the first major revolts against British colonial rule in Africa. Here is a detailed account of the event. This story provides a vivid retelling of the historic Abah Women's Riot of 1929, blending factual accuracy with creative storytelling. It captures the socio-political tensions of the era, emphasizing the bravery and unity of women who challenged colonial oppression. The story structure is engaging, taking the reader through the key phases of the uprising: its origins, the organization of the protest, the confrontation, and its enduring legacy. It was a warm November morning in 1929 when Nwanyirua, a market woman in the town of Oloko, wiped the sweat off her brow as she arranged her wares under the open sky. The hum of the market was familiar, voices blending as women exchanged goods and gossip. But today, there was an unusual tension in the air, a whisper of unease that traveled faster than the breeze. The day began to unravel when Chief Okugo, a warrant chief appointed by the British colonial administration, arrived in the market with his entourage. His intent was clear: to count the women, a practice that the villagers knew was a precursor to taxation. The women had already seen the devastating effects of colonial taxation on their husbands and brothers, and now, the rumor of taxing women themselves ignited a spark of outrage. Nwanyirua, known for her sharp tongue and unyielding spirit, confronted Okugo. "Why should we, the women who nurture this land, now pay taxes for the very ground we walk on?" she demanded. Okugo dismissed her concerns with a sneer, but his arrogance only fueled the anger simmering in the hearts of the women around her. The call to action. Word spread quickly through the network of women in Oloko and beyond. The markets, already a hub of trade, became centers of mobilization. Women began to gather, their numbers swelling with each passing day. Messages were sent through secret channels, using songs and traditional signals that only they could interpret. The rallying cry was clear: we will not be silenced. We will not be taxed. By the time the sun set, over 10,000 women had pledged to join the cause. They came from villages near and far, Igbo, Ibibio, and others, carrying their babies on their backs and pots of food in their hands. Their voices united in song, their chants filling the air with defiance. The power of tradition. The women employed their traditional methods of protest. One was the practice of sitting on a man, where they surrounded the homes and offices of the warrant chiefs, singing, dancing, and ridiculing them with satirical songs. This was no mere act of mischief. It was a cultural weapon, one that struck fear into the hearts of those in power. They painted their faces with chalk, symbolizing their readiness for battle, and carried palm fronds as emblems of unity. In Abah, Owerri, and Calabar, the women marched to the native courts, demanding justice. They overturned tables, broke windows, and burned colonial buildings. The colonial administration was caught off guard. They had underestimated these women, dismissing them as subservient and docile. The clash. The British colonial authorities responded with force, sending armed troops to quell the protests. In some towns, soldiers opened fire on unarmed women. The chaos was unimaginable. Women scattered, yet their spirit remained unbroken. Over 50 women were killed and many others injured, but even in the face of death, they sang their songs of resistance. Nwanyirua herself narrowly escaped one of these attacks. As she hid in the shadows of a thatched hut, she vowed to continue the fight for her people. "They may take our lives, but they will never take our dignity," she whispered to herself, clutching the palm frond that had become a symbol of their struggle. The aftermath. In the weeks that followed, the British administration was forced to confront the scale of the rebellion. Investigations were launched, and some of the oppressive policies, including the taxation of women, were reconsidered. The warrant chief system, a cornerstone of the colonial indirect rule, was critically reviewed and eventually reformed. The uprising had ended, but its impact reverberated across the region. Nwanyirua and the other women who led the charge became symbols of resilience. They had shown that even in a patriarchal and colonial society, the collective power of women could shake the foundations of oppression. Years later, as the sun set over the village of Iloko, children gathered around the fire to listen to stories of the Abah Women's War. Elders spoke of Nwanyirua and her sisters, the women who had stood against the might of the British Empire with nothing but their voices and their unity. Their courage reminds us, one elder said, that no matter how powerful the oppressor, the spirit of the people cannot be extinguished. The Abah Women's Riot lives on as a testament to the strength of collective action and the enduring power of women to change the course of history. The Abah Women's Riot remains an important part of Nigeria's history, showcasing the power of organized protest and the role of women in shaping the nation's destiny. Highlights of the riot: colonial indirect rule. The British implemented a system of indirect rule in Nigeria, governing through local chiefs who were often appointed without considering traditional power structures. This system disrupted traditional governance, eroded communal decision-making, and introduced new forms of taxation and resource extraction. Introduction of taxation. In the late 1920s, the British colonial administration began to expand its taxation system to the local population. A rumor spread that the British planned to tax women, who had previously been excluded from the poll tax imposed on men. This rumor exacerbated tensions. Cultural context. In Igbo and Ibibio societies, women played critical roles in the economy and governance, often organizing collectively to address grievances. The sitting on a man tradition, a form of protest, allowed women to exert social pressure on authorities or men who abused power. The uprising, catalyst event. In November 1929, a British-appointed warrant chief named Okugo attempted to conduct a census of women in Iloko, a prelude to potential taxation. Women perceived this as a step toward direct taxation and protested. Organization. The protest began with market women from Iloko, but quickly spread to other parts of southeastern Nigeria. Over 25,000 women from different ethnic groups, primarily Igbo and Ibibio, participated in the movement. Methods of protest. The women used traditional methods such as singing, dancing, and sitting on a man, gathering en masse at the homes or offices of officials to demand action. They targeted colonial administrative buildings, warrant chiefs' homes, and native courts, demanding an end to taxation and the removal of corrupt chiefs. Key events spread across the region. Protests occurred in major towns like Abah, Owerri, and Calabar. Women demonstrated remarkable organization, often communicating through traditional networks and markets. Violent suppression. The colonial authorities, unprepared for the scale of the protests, responded with force. Troops and police were deployed to suppress the uprising. In several instances, authorities opened fire on unarmed protesters, resulting in significant casualties. Impact and outcomes. Casualties. Over 50 women were killed, and many others were injured during the protests. Changes in colonial policy. The British government undertook a review of the warrant chief system, acknowledging its unpopularity and the grievances it caused. Although taxation on women was never officially implemented, the uprising led to greater scrutiny of colonial policies. The Abah Women's Riot is celebrated as an early example of anti-colonial resistance in Nigeria. It highlighted the agency and leadership of women in political movements and served as a precursor to later nationalist struggles. Significance: feminist and anti-colonial narrative. The uprising demonstrated the capacity of women to organize and resist oppressive systems, challenging both gender and colonial hierarchies. It remains a powerful symbol of collective action and grassroots resistance. Recognition. The event has inspired academic research, literary works, and cultural commemorations in Nigeria and beyond. Please like, comment, and subscribe to Educative African Tales for more educative stories. Thank you immensely for watching.